There was a time when every notification from our phones made my heart tighten. Kept wondering if it was another bill we weren't ready to deal with. The hardest part was never the balance in our bank account. It was noticing how money quietly changed the way we looked at each other. We still gathered around the same dining table every day. Even so, it felt as though an invisible wall was quietly growing between us. I used to believe our biggest problem was simply not having enough money. Later, I realized there was something far more dangerous than that. My name is Clara. I always tried to keep our home feeling warm, even when my mind was crowded with unfinished numbers. Every morning I made breakfast while counting the bills due that week. My hands stayed busy cooking, but my thoughts kept searching for a way to make everything stretch far enough. Our man left for work like he always did. We smiled at each other, but that smile carried more tiredness than it had a few months before. Whenever an unexpected expense came up, the feeling inside the house quietly changed. There were no arguments, only a silence that seemed to last a little longer each time. I became careful every time I wanted to buy something. Even simple household needs sometimes made me feel like I should apologize first. Without realizing it, money found its way into almost every conversation we had. Instead of helping us live, it quietly followed us as a constant source of worry. At first, I believed every couple probably went through a season like this. I kept telling myself that things would get better eventually. Then I started noticing the same pattern again and again. Every time money came up, we quietly drifted farther apart instead of closer together. I stayed quiet because I didn't want to make things harder. Armand often nodded, but he rarely spoke about what he was carrying inside. From the outside, the silence looked peaceful. Inside that silence were fears we never found the words to say. I began asking myself a difficult question. Were we protecting each other, or were we slowly losing each other without realizing it? That was when something became clear to me. Maybe our struggle wasn't only about money, but about how we faced fear together. One night before going to sleep, I opened my banking app just to check our balance. I closed it again within seconds because the weight in my chest felt too difficult to ignore. I started hiding my worry behind simple words that sounded reassuring. I kept saying I was fine, even though my mind never seemed to stop working. Armand became quieter whenever I mentioned our spending. I knew he was carrying something heavy, but I could not find a way to reach him. Without realizing it, we slowly tied our sense of worth to the numbers in our account. Whenever the balance felt smaller, we quietly felt like we had failed each other. Counting the numbers was not the hardest part. The hardest part was trying to guess what we were both feeling without saying it aloud. Our home was still filled with Mira's laughter every day. Behind those happy moments, two tired adults were quietly carrying the same fear on their own. We still showed up for family gatherings with warm smiles. No one could see how much effort it took to make everything seem normal. Before leaving home, we had spent a long time talking about unpaid bills. Even after the conversation ended, it stayed quietly with both of us. When Mira asked for ice cream after school, we still bought it for her. On the drive home, I quietly recalculated our budget in my mind. Armand picked up extra shifts whenever he could. I knew it was his way of showing love, even as he came home looking more tired each week. I kept looking for small ways to spend less every day. The harder we both tried, the more often it felt like we were still falling behind. From the outside, our family still looked perfectly fine. Quietly, though, we were beginning to see each other as part of the pressure instead of the place where we could rest. One evening, Mira sat at the dining table drawing our family. I smiled as she carefully filled each figure with different colors. Then she pointed to the little drawing of herself in the middle. In a quiet voice, she asked, "Why don't Mom and Dad laugh together as much anymore?" I couldn't answer right away. Her simple question felt heavier than every bill we had ever received. I turned toward Armand. For the first time in a long while, we simply looked at each other without talking about money. I realized Mira had never known how much money was in our bank account. She'd only been feeling the way our home had slowly changed. That night, I understood something I hadn't been able to name before. It wasn't only our finances that felt fragile, but also the sense of security our daughter should have felt at home. After Mira fell asleep, I sat alone in the living room without turning on the lights. My thoughts quietly drifted back through every conversation Armand and I had shared over the past few months. I slowly realized we had never truly been fighting the problem itself. Without noticing, we had been pushing against each other because we were both afraid. I had always assumed Armand stayed quiet because he did not care enough to speak. Now I wondered if his silence came from feeling that he had failed to protect our family. Armand may have seen my constant worry as pressure that kept growing between us. In truth, I only wanted us to carry the weight together. That was when I understood money had only been the thing that started it. The real struggle was the fear we had never spoken about out loud. I decided that starting tomorrow, Armand and I could no longer stand on opposite sides. We needed to face the same problem as one team again. The next evening, after Mira had fallen asleep, I asked Armand to sit with me at the dining table. We were not there to count each other's mistakes, only to quietly listen. I quietly told him that I did not want us to keep feeling worn down because of money. I only wanted us to feel like we were on the same team again. Armand took a long breath before he finally answered. He admitted that he often stayed silent because he was afraid of disappointing us, not because he did not care. That night, we created a new routine that we called the no-blame budget meeting. Every week, we would talk about money without blaming each other, only looking for solutions together. We changed one question. Instead of asking who was wrong, we began asking, what can we do this week? And the conversation felt lighter. Not everything was solved that night. But for the first time in a long while, it felt as though we were facing the same problem instead of facing each other. The following week, Armand and I sat at the dining table again with warm cups of tea between us. There were no raised voices, only a few handwritten notes, and an honest conversation that unfolded quietly. We began noticing the small victories instead of waiting for perfect circumstances. A paid bill and a little less spending felt meaningful because we had reached those moments together. I no longer carried every worry by myself. Armand also started sharing more of the weight that had been sitting quietly on his mind. Our home had not become wealthier. Even so, it felt much more peaceful than it had only a few months earlier. During dinner, Mira laughed again after hearing something her father said. It was a simple sound that we had not realized had quietly disappeared for a long time. I learned that a healthy relationship is not one without difficulties. It is one where two people keep holding on to each other while those difficulties are still there. Today I understand that money can become a source of pressure. The way we face that pressure shapes the future of our family. Since we stopped blaming each other and started trying to understand one another, our home has felt warmer. Financial security is built through trust as much as the numbers in a bank account. If my story has kept you company today, I'd be so happy if you continued following our journey in Clara's Family Journal. I hope each simple story here helps you feel a little less alone while building a peaceful family life. Now I'd like to ask you something. Have you and your partner ever gone through a difficult season because of money, and what eventually helped you become a team again?